Welcome to First Responder Financial Freedom Podcast. We talk to first responders all over the nation who are investing and working on businesses outside of their first responder jobs. Our goal is to motivate and educate each other and help provide a better financial understanding for a better future. Now here are your hosts, Mike Webb, Tyler Thrush, and Aaron Foster.
All right, episode number 6 with Big Ben. We are First Responders Financial Freedom, and we're going to be talking to Ben today. Ben was a builder. He is a father. He is also a fireman, and he owns a franchise of Roof Maxx, which is kind of a cool niche roofing material. So we've got a lot of rabbit holes to go down with Ben about each aspect of his investing and his business and his franchise. So Ben, tell me how you got into this, because I know you started as a builder, right?
Yep. So I started off when I was 12. I started doing construction for my buddy's dad, and then got out of high school and didn't think college was a good route for me. So I kept swinging a hammer, worked for a guy that was basically an ass. So I thought, if this guy can do it, I can do it. And figured out how to get the LLC set up and got my builder's license, and did that for a while, and was going to school at night to stay on my parents' insurance, and then stumbled into the fire program there and got into the fire deal. And then go ahead.
So building, so you're a qualified builder up in Michigan, right?
Correct. Yep.
Was that the first one that kind of led you into the fire department?
Yeah. So I was doing the fire departments, or just going to school at night to stay on insurance until I was 26 was kind of my plan. And stumbled into the fire science program because I had taken pretty much every other class at the community college by me. And I got along with the guys and enjoyed that. So that's when I thought maybe that'd be a good career option for me, and started researching that more. And that's how I stumbled into the fire service. So,
and you've been on the job for 7 years now, right?
7 years. Yep.
Okay. So
started in December of 14.
December of 14. All right. So you've been building since when? Your own company?
Since I was 8. Yeah. So I started my company in 2006.
Okay. So you built for 6 years before you got in the fire department. Then you got in the fire department, and then you started a franchise. So what kind of building work are you doing?
Mostly residential remodeling. I worked for a guy that was an investor. He flipped like 30 to 40 houses a year in the summer or over the winter. He had a painting company during the summertime. So I did a lot of work for him, and then I was all word of mouth work. So you'd be the tile guy for 6 months because everybody thought you did tile, and then you do somebody's skylight repair, and then everybody wanted skylights. But I mostly did anything on the house residential inside now. We pretty much did it. So
cool. So like you kind of this comes back to this comes to mind when I think of you as like a jack of all trades is a master of none, but a jack of all trades is better than a master of one. So like that's kind of what your niche is like you can do a lot of different things. You can build it, you can tear it down, you can put the fire out when it catches on fire. So when you got into the building, like why did you decide to get in the fire department and not pursue the building career?
It just seemed like something I was interested in, and I think I just got sick of doing the construction thing. So 2008, when the economy crashed, I had like 20 people working for me, and we hit a brick wall at about 1,000 miles an hour. So I lost about $100,000 that year, and thought, man, I don't know if I want to keep losing money like this. This sucks. Trying to figure that out. Luckily, I was really young, and it wasn't as big a deal.
What was that like?
Still, and no family. 2008, when the economy kind of the housing took a hit, and I had a bunch of no pays at the end of the year, and really didn't have myself protected with good contracts. It was all just on handshakes, and but it was a good time for me to do that and learn those lessons when I was early 20s, no family, no wife, none of that stuff, living at home. I had nothing to lose really. So
did you buy or keep any of those properties back then, or did you have more now? Like what's
no, so I was just strictly working for a guy. He'd sub out stuff to me. So he started off, couldn't find anybody to do plumbing. So I was like, well, I'll do your plumbing. So he did that, and then we just did whatever he couldn't find other people to do. I just kind of fill in, and then if they'd sold the house and there was problems, I'd go and fix it and fix problems. And then with his painting company, we did all their board replacement. So they painted like 5 to 6 houses a day all summer long. And we do the board replacement ahead of them and power washing, caulking. So that was one. Actually, that was 2 summers we did that for the guy. So that's how I got kind of in touch with him for doing his house flipping stuff. And that was my first kind of taste of real estate. I thought, man, this is kind of a cool option. I should figure out how to do that someday.
So was he just giving you? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Mike.
Were you just doing the labor, or did you kind of get a peek behind the curtain to see the business side of things? Because it sounds like he was doing a bit of a volume business.
Yeah. So at the time, I really didn't think about it. I didn't grow up from having a lot. So I thought, I'll love to buy a house someday when I can afford it. So I never really thought it was something I could get into ever. But I kind of saw how he did things and how he did the high volume stuff. Everything he did was high volume. So from house flipping to painting, it was just, spread out the risk by doing a ton of it at one time.
Did anybody you off of him?
What's that?
Did anybody try to poach you off of him? Because usually the good ones, somebody else comes along and like snatch you up from him, or is he giving you enough to keep you happy?
He was giving me enough, and then I had other customers too, so we just kind of throw them in the schedule. And back then, I really didn't have a schedule. I just worked. Like, it was kind of like working was my hobby and hobby was my work. So I would work a 20-hour day and never think anything of it. We'd be running pipe at 4:30 in the morning, and I'd have guys we had times where I'd have 2 crews going, and I just run both crews. So I just go, and it was fun. I was young. I thought I was on top of the world. Looking back, I didn't know my numbers. I didn't know how to run a business. I wasn't making much money. I felt like I was, because I could afford a diesel truck and trailer and cool tools and stuff like that. I wasn't saving or putting money away or anything like that.
You were speaking my language, bro. That's like, guys are like, I can afford a jet ski this year. Like, all right, that's what I'm going to do. I can afford a 4-wheeler this year. Like, that's the next move. Like, they don't run profit and loss statements. Like, they don't know how to run like an itemized cost expense sheet to see like, where's my money going out? Where's my money coming in? Like, what am I actually making per hour? But you ended up learning that stuff as you got older, right?
Yeah. Yep. And I, looking back, our quality was incredible. A couple of the guys that had, we pushed each other, and we were putting out a really good product for like the cheapest price probably in town. So that's why I was always busy, because I'm sure people are telling their friends, like, you've got to hire Ben, man. This guy will do it for nothing, and he will not stop till it's right. So yeah.
That's professional though. That's like you have pride in your work and your craftsmanship. Yeah. Like that's one of the things that I've seen a lot of contractors is lacking, especially the ones that take pictures at awkward angles to make it look good and just be like, hey, it's done. Look at this. And then it's like, you get there, it looks like child's putty, put on walls, or floors aren't done, or like it's missing the crown molding, or there's caulking of like 2 inches wide on seams where molding is supposed to join together or butt together.
Do your best and caulk the rest, man.
That's right.
A lot of that goes.
And that's most of us too. When you're saying that, it's funny. We know that we're good at our trade or our craft, but as far as running a business, that's like a whole new eye opener. You're like, well, I'm making tons of money because you see all these checks come in, but we all conveniently forget about those checks going out to pay labor and materials. And we think, yeah, hey, we're on top of the world. We're like, oh, whoa, profit and loss. What is this net profit number?
Yeah.
That's
a whole new thing to learn.
I used to work for an old angry Irish carpenter, like finished carpentry, and like he gets this things down to like the 32nd of an inch, and I'm like, if I'm like a 16th of an inch off, he's like, this is fucking garbage. Like, I don't need pieces of shit like you working for me, like cussing me out. And I'm like, now anytime I look at something and I'm like, I could have just caulked that, and I can hear in the back of my head like, you're a piece of shit. Like, how the fuck did you get a job with me? I can replace you every day. So you transitioned into house remodeling for the most part. Into the fire department, and then from the fire department, you got kids at home, right? So time management's a big thing, and now you're doing Roof Maxx, right?
Correct. Yep. So once I got in the fire department, I moved for the job. I was applying all over the place, couldn't get in anywhere, and it was frustrating because I had every cert I could get my hands on. Tested really well, interviewed really well, but I finally got a job offer, and then once I got the one offer, then I got like 10 after that, which is how it always goes, from what I understand. But,
so where are you working at now?
Midland, which is like in the center of the state in Michigan. Smaller department, 3 stations, 44 full-time guys. We do like about 6,000 runs a year. EMT, Fire 1, 2. So
we were before the conversation. Mike was just saying like he's back on he's on shift work. He has to get used to the tones going off from being on day work for so long.
Okay.
So it's kind of cool to see like I was the same way. Like when I taught, I got suckered into teaching for a couple of years, and I was like, once I got back to shift work, I was like, it's a busy 24 hours, but like you have 3 days. For us, we're 24/72. It's like when I got back off of shift work, I got 3 days to recover. Like, you can't tell me shit. I'm on top of the world right now. All right, what kind of shift work are you guys working there?
We do like a Kelly cycle, so 9 days every other for 4 days off. So
like 24/48s and then a Kelly day every 5th rotation.
24 on, 24 off, 24 on, 24 off, 24 on, and then 4 days off.
Oof. And you're able to run a franchise business on top of that.
Yeah, so I had to get really efficient with my time. That's one thing I learned, like when I was going to school full time at night and running a business. And like when the economy crashed, we could talk for days about all this stuff, but I was driving limos for my buddy's company. I was doing everything, just trying to make ends meet. But I started planning my days out with a 24-hour calendar and realized like how much time's in a day. And then you start backing out. He's like, I don't have time. It's like, you do have time. You just have to allocate it. So
100%.
It's like when I'm at work and we're in between calls and there's nothing I'm required to do, making sales calls and responding to emails. And in the evenings, I do a lot of that stuff at work too, just trying to like maximize my time when I'm not home. So when I'm home, I can try to do the dad thing and husband thing too. But it's a lot to juggle.
Did you anticipate when you got hired back onto the fire department, did you anticipate staying with the side business, or did it ever stop? Or were you thinking, I'm going to go to the fire department and then this is going to be it, and kind of hang up that construction hat? Or was it always kind of in the back of your mind to, hey, I'm going to get hired and continue to do this? And part two is, do a lot of guys on your job, do they also have second jobs like yourself?
Yeah. So I kind of thought I'd always do stuff here and there. I didn't realize how much I was going to end up needing to do. And when I got on, I just looked at what the old guys had on their pensions or retirement and all that stuff. And I'm like, oh, this is sweet. I can just do some side jobs for cash, for fun money or whatever. And then I started looking into like our pension and our retirement and like everything that it was lacking compared to the older guys, and realized that I'm going to just beat myself up in this job, get out of my 50s, and then to go start a new career. And now once I had kids, my wife stays home full time. So the second job became a necessity to kind of cover bills and be able to save for the retirement and all that stuff. So that's when I've kind of transitioned to like, I need to make a plan and make a decision of what I want to do. So that's when I started looking for something like Roof Maxx and trying to find more rental properties and that type of stuff, because I realized that we're not going to be able to survive on the pension that we're going to get with this. We have like a 2-tier system. So the other guys have a way better plan than we do. We have no health care. Multipliers are gone. Roll-ins are gone, or not gone, but they are down. Can't do the roll-in thing and play the system at the end or any of that stuff. So,
okay.
So started doing the math and no cost of living adjustment. So I'm like, okay, this is getting worse. The more I read into it, the more I'm like, this is not what I thought it was going to be. So
yeah, we had a very similar conversation with Ian Horowitz on a previous episode. So I guess how was the transition? Because I think you're the first person we've chatted with that's kind of gone the franchise route. So you mentioned rental properties. You have a background in construction. So what made you just say, I'm going to go with a franchise? And like, what did that look like? Why choose that versus just doing your own thing?
Yeah. So the biggest thing I was looking for is something that was niche, that there wasn't as much competition in, and that I could train people to do one thing well. So when I was doing the remodeling thing, it was really tough to find guys. Like I hired guys from the station, to here and there, but they're basically unskilled when it came to construction work, or had a little bit of background from like a couple summers in college. But, we do a basement 1 month and then do a bathroom and then do a roof and then do windows. And I know how to do all that stuff, but trying to train people, it's like constantly training people all the time. We never really got into a good workflow where you're making money, because it costs a lot to train people and then they get sick of it, burnt out, or so I can take overtime and go sit at the station or come bust my butt working for Ben. I get it. Take the overtime, So I wanted to find something where I could just train people to be good at one, maybe two things, and I can just set them loose and they can go do the jobs while I'm at the station or at home with my family or whatever. So I stumbled on the Roof Maxx thing. I've always really enjoyed roofing, but again, it's hard. You need a lot of people to do it. It's hard to find people that want to do it. So this is kind of a high volume thing, which I learned that working for the house flip guy's name was Fred, and his painting business, and how much that cash flow with the high volume thing really could pay off in the long term. So started researching Roof Maxx, was super skeptical of it when I found it, like everybody is, but I did my research on it. What were we going to say?
So Roof Maxx is kind of a unique niche for roofing. So like most people, when they think about re-roofing, they think about the tear off or a second layer onto it of asphalt shingles or tin roof or something like that. So Roof Maxx, explain to me how you're basically regenerating or rejuvenating the roof. Like, tell me how it works.
Yep. So Roof Maxx is a spray-on product. It's an all-natural bio oil. They pull out of soybean oil. You spray it onto the shingles. It penetrates into the shingle, soaks into the asphalt core, and brings back, basically rehydrates the asphalt. So as that shingle dries out, gets brittle, starts losing the granules on top, Roof Maxx, you spray onto it, soaks into the shingles, rehydrates the asphalt, brings the flexibility, waterproofability, and granule retention back to the shingle. So instead of just letting the roof run out, tear it up, put a new one on, we could extend the life of it 5 years per treatment. And the treatments are about 15% of what a new roof would cost. So in my market, every market's different on roofing, but we're running around $2,000 per treatment. Versus replacement around here is like 10 to 15 grand on the average home. So quite a bit cheaper than.
I just finished a feasibility study because we're looking at doing a 14-unit build down in Virginia. And the roofing, I called a buddy of mine when I was looking over it. And I was like, pre-COVID, I was spending $200 to $250 per square. And a square is a 10 by 10 section of roof, right? So that's your base price. Once your pitch goes up to where it's not walkable anymore, the price goes up and blah, 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 blah. So, and at the higher end, architectural shingle is going to cost more versus the old pre-tab. Now it's like, I think my buddy just told me it was like between $400 and $500 is the price per square right now. And that boggles my mind. It's like if the average house is going to be a $10,000 to $20,000 house at least. This is a good option to rejuvenate the shingles on your roof, add some life to it. It has a warranty, right?
Correct. So there's a 5-year warranty. Now it's not a leak-proof guarantee. We're not putting like a sealant on the roof. It's a penetrant that soaks into the shingle. So if there's leaks, we need to address those, do some targeted repair or replacement. But like, so every dealership kind of does things their own way. You have some flexibility, but the typical dealer's going to do is called a roof tune-up. On the roof tune-up, they're going to go through the roof, check your pipe boots, put new gaskets on the pipe boots, check the caulking around flashing kits, chimneys, all that. Make sure the caulking's up to snuff. Check for loose shingles, re-nail those back in. There's all that general maintenance that doesn't typically get done that should get done. Get that caught up and then treat it. And the warranties on the flexibility of the shingle and that the shingle is going to hold up for that 5-year span like it should, like a newer shingle would. So it's not a leak-proof guarantee. I want to make sure people don't think it's something it's not or whatever. But
the roof rejuvenation. So like when they go around caulking and rebooting and stuff like that. So what is something like that on a range cost, give or take?
Every market's going to be different, but usually it's between like 85 cents a square foot to $1.15, $1.20 a square foot, depending on the market.
Right. So like the nail pops, when you see like the shingles like popping up and water underneath of it, like they'll come in, they'll hammer the nails down. If there's caulking around the seams of like the chimney, they'll re-caulk that. All the stuff that people don't go on roofs to do. So are you a truck guy or are you an engine guy, or do you guys do both?
We do everything. We're a small department, so I got off of everything because my bandwidth was too tough. But I was on our hazmat team, our tech rescue team. We're like we have the regional team for both of that, and then we got guys on the state teams. So we're to kind of do everything. So if somebody else can't do it, they call Midland, and then we have to figure it out. So we do a lot of that stuff. But
do you ever go over like the building, like design and structure and how it's built with guys? Because I've noticed a lot of younger guys who have never been around the trades. They don't know how a house is built and how the structure can affect how you fight the fire. You ever go over like with the younger guys, like how these things are put together?
We talked about it a little bit. A lot of the younger guys are working for me on and off, so they kind of get a taste of how this stuff works. But yeah, it's amazing how many people don't know how to even like swing a hammer anymore, or like use a pry bar. Or, it's pretty wild.
It's funny because when we did like building codes construction when I was in college and when I came out, it was like when I talked to rookies, they're like, I don't know anything about framing. I don't know about balloon structure. I don't know about false roofs or double roofs or like a lot of the things. So like they all have an impact on how we look at buildings, because obviously DC, we have houses that are brand new. I think our most expensive house right now in DC is $20 million. And we have properties built in like, the late 1700s, early 1800s. So like each one's going to be a different animal when you build it, when you repair it, or when you put a fire out in it. So with you guys, like you kind of have the whole spectrum of how to build a house. So did you use that to start buying properties, or do you have rental properties now?
Yeah, so I have a few now. So I kind of fell into those, and it's been something I haven't made it like a main focus of mine. It's just they fall into my lap, I pick them up, and I want to try to focus on that more. But again, I'm trying to build the Roof Maxx brand, so if things come up, I'll grab them or whatever. But something I need to dig into more. But the guy that I rented from when I first moved to Midland, when I got the job, owned a bunch of rental properties, and he ended up saying, "Hey, you want to buy this house?" And I'm like, "I can't buy a house. Just didn't think I was ready to do that yet." And he's like, "I'll sell it to you on a land contract." So I thought about that, ended up buying a land contract. We negotiated the terms out, and then I think he's on like an exit plan for getting rid of his properties. So he had another one he wasn't able to sell. So he called me up and said, "Hey, I got another rental for you, 0 down, same terms as the other one." I'm like, "Sure." So I ended up having two unit, first floor, second floor type deals. And then before my wife and I got got married, I had her buy a house with her income, and then I bought a house. And once we got married, we moved into her house, and then I started intending to flip the one that I had bought. And then we got pretty deep into the flip because found some stuff I just didn't feel right leaving. And then I ended up holding that one to rent it as well, refinanced out of that one. And then we just picked up another single family last year from a guy at work that didn't want it anymore.
So that's three or four rentals there?
Yep. And then I have one that I'm half partners with another friend from the department that we went half on. Yeah.
So about five rental properties, give or take.
And then the house we're in now is kind of a live-in flip type of deal. So I'm not sure how long we'll stay here, but
God bless you. I did that on accident in our first house. My wife swore never again.
Yeah, my wife's right with your wife, I think, on that.
Ben, you mentioned land contract. Can you just give us a brief synopsis of what that is and why it's beneficial? Sure. Kind of like explain it to me like I'm 5, because I'm sure there's some folks listening to this that have never heard that terminology and have no idea what that is.
Yeah, so basically the guy owned the properties and he sold them and he holds the note on the house. So instead of going to a bank and having the bank lend you the money, they front the money and you pay them. You negotiate a down payment and an interest rate. Typically they're for people that don't have good credit or don't have like a unique situation, because you're going to get a better rate typically at the bank in most cases. But this way it kind of keeps it off your credit, keeps it off your credit profile, and can give you some different options as far as just creative financing. But yeah, basically the seller holds the note and you pay them like they're the bank. And then typically there's some kind of balloon payment type of deal.
So usually like the owner financing, it's basically it's a different way to say owner financing, where
correct,
the owner of the property sells it to somebody else. The owner finances the property at an inflated rate. So for him, like for right now, we'll say the rates are 4.25%. So he would probably sell it to you for like 4.75% or 5%. So he makes the middle number up. Tyler, so if those you don't know, Tyler has a mortgage company. So Tyler, do you ever deal with refinancing out of land contracts?
No, because I mean, in California, land contracts really aren't a thing. But I mean, we've refinanced out of owner financing, same thing. So yeah.
Is there more of a task or more obstacles when somebody has to refinance out of an owner financed contract?
No, I mean, honestly, the hardest part is, I mean, the only thing I can think of is just getting a payoff from the private lender. Usually it's an individual. They don't know how to fill out a payoff sheet. And then luckily I do. I mean, I lend as well. So I just call them. I'm like, hey, this is what you got to do. You got to figure it out. And that's really it. But there's not too many hurdles. I know some states are more prevalent with land contracts and owner finance. Sounds like, I want to say Indiana, maybe in Michigan too, but I know there's certain states where that's more prevalent. And East Coast, I want to say West Virginia as well. And I think it's just state dependent. But no, as far as I go, when we're refinancing somebody, it's just that payoff sheet that's a little bit different.
So what kind of parameters, Ben, do you guys have? Is it like a balloon at 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? Like, do you guys have an agreement there?
Yeah. So the way that it went in, and I kind of found out that I could have gotten out of these earlier if I wanted to, because they changed some laws, but I kind of gave my word and signed a contract. So I just kind of stuck with it. But the way ours were set up is it was a 7-year. I couldn't refinance for 7 years, and then I can either pay it off or renegotiate terms after that 7-year kind of freeze period. And, which is just about up actually. So I got to figure out what I'm going to do with that, but rates are probably going back up, and I got these at 6%. He came at me at 12, which I thought was insane at the time, but we kind of went back and forth. Yeah, exactly. But I can see that, like, I definitely would look at selling my properties when I want to exit on a land contract, because you become the bank. So if you don't have much of a note on them anymore, you make a payment for $800 and then you end up paying $750 goes to interest or whatever it is. You know what I mean? It's a pretty cool way to exit your property and pull extra cash out if you have time to be patient with it.
But even at your high inflated rate, like, you're still making money from the rentals, right?
Correct. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I ran all the numbers, so we're still cash flowing. So having them be 2 units helped a lot. So like my one property, it's my mortgage, tax, insurance, everything's like $724 a month, and that one I get $1,300 a month out of. The other one I pay like $465 a month on that one, and that one goes for $1,275 is what I get on rent between the 2 units. So the numbers work out. Like I said, I kind of fell into these. I put 10 grand down between the two of them. So I have like my cash on cash returns incredible because I didn't put much down on them. But so yeah, like I said, these are kind of anomalies that I don't think happen very often. I've tried to get more houses from him, and he's not giving me the sweetheart deal. And I have a hard time paying more once I know what I can get them for. So
yeah. Well, the good news is everything else is going up, so it all stays relative, hopefully.
Right.
So Ben, you got a couple rental properties. You're working at the firehouse, and you have a franchise. How are you able to basically? You alluded to the training. Everybody was expensive. It took a lot of time. So that's why you went the franchise route, because you wanted to just have a repeatable system. And I think that kind of speaks to a lot of what we've been talking about on this show or other shows and, just offline, is how do you kind of leverage some of that time? Because with the firehouse, whether you're a trooper or a medic or whatever the case is, like, you get so ingrained in that you got to trade time for money. So we're kind of we're always looking for ways now, it seems like, how do we get the job done, but without us physically being there or being able to remove ourselves a significant amount and still kind of get that ball down the field. How are you doing that with the Roof Maxx business?
Yeah, so that's where having the franchise helps a lot. And they call them dealerships, so it's basically a franchise setup, but they spend a lot of time and money figuring out ways and systems to be as efficient as possible. So we've got some technology platforms that we leverage that do auto texting, and you can put them in like a program where they'll, if a lead comes in, they'll get an email and a text message right away, and then it'll connect to me automatically if they call that number back or text it back. It helps connect me. So there's a lot of technology you can use to kind of leverage your time. And then the franchising helps a lot because they've got, a whole slew of pictures and videos and all this stuff that I can just grab that are professionally done and put out into Facebook or into the world or give to a marketing company that I'm using. So I don't have to spend time trying to create all this stuff. And I'm horrible on computers. I don't really like them that much. Not a video game person. Like, I'm a tactile person, hands-on, putting stuff together, taking it apart type of deal. So for me to try to edit a movie is a bad idea. I need to find somebody to do that for me.
Last week we talked to Allie Anderson, and she was talking about how her VA basically does a lot of what you just described because she just didn't have time. It's not her expertise. And they were basically able to take it and run with it. So as much as you're willing to share, what does it look like to tear into a dealership or a franchise? Maybe, obviously use whatever you're comfortable sharing, but like,
Sure.
does that cost $1 million to get started? Or, I mean, how do you
Yeah,
get
so
into
I don't
a franchise, and what do they take to provide all that? How's that work?
Yeah. So every franchise type business is going to be different how they set it up. Some of them are really high point of entry. Like if you want to get a McDonald's, that's a ton of money to get started. Or there's like Firehouse Subs up here. I forget what that costs. It's like 50 or 60 grand, I think. I looked at it a while back, but it was pretty expensive to get into it. But it's a very proven system. Like Subway restaurants, another good one where you can say, hey, I want to open one in this city, and they can tell you you're going to make about this much a year if you run it. If you hire a manager, you can expect that. So Roof Maxx, I'm not sure what it is now to get in. Things have gone up. I've been doing this 3.5 years now. But at the time, I had all the equipment already. I had a truck. I had stuff. I just had to get it wrapped and do some other stuff they wanted to. So I think it cost me like 30 or 40 grand to get started initially. And then that's when I thought I was like, okay, now I'm going to go do jobs. Well, then you have to basically teach your customers what the product is and how it's beneficial to them. And that's where it gets expensive. So like last year I spent about 60 grand on advertising between radio and social media and targeted display and all this other stuff that I don't really know that much about, but I have a company that does a really good job with it. But to educate the market. So that's where it gets expensive. Like if you just wanted to do a couple jobs a month and make some extra cash, you probably don't have to go that deep, but I'm trying to build up a brand and kind of take it to the next level so I can hire employees full time and all that. So that costs a lot more.
So a lot of franchises, like they have a buy-in price, like you were saying, like there's like $30,000, $40,000, $60,000 for different ones. Then they also get a percentage of your either gross profit or net profit, right?
Correct.
You guys have that as well on yours?
So ours is based off it. So our product comes in these 275 gallon totes, and that's where Roof Maxx corporate makes their money is off the product because they've got exclusive rights to create the product and patents and stuff like that on it. And they've got new generations coming out that they're getting updated patents and all that on. So that's where they make their money, is every tote you buy, they make money on the product exclusively.
Right. So the other ones, they require a brick and mortar, and they require, so like we'll say Starbucks says you have to have, I think it's $100,000 or $1 million in liquid assets. And you have to have a brick and mortar, and they want a certain amount of traffic to go by the property or be in a specific location. So each franchise seems like it's going to have a different demand. So I was looking at buying a company called iMazy, where they take photography of your eyes. It's a very niche thing. It's popular over in the UK and Australia. But they wanted you to have, I think it was $30,000 buy-in, and they get 8 or 10% of all of your gross profits for every year or every month, whatever it was. So like if you're looking at buying a franchise, are there things that you would avoid going forward now that you've bought your first franchise?
Yeah, I would just look at the numbers. You got to run the numbers and look at what's expected of you. And, everybody gets excited about something. You go buy your first house or even your 10th house, and you go into it and you're all excited and you overlook a bunch of stuff. Like the house we're in right now. I don't know how many home inspections I've done for people over the years. I bought this house. I was in a hurry. There's 18 windows in the house. I checked 3. They all worked. I literally checked the only 3 windows that worked. The rest of them were broken and either didn't go up or didn't stay down. It was a mess. And I'm just like, how do I, and I learned a lesson. I'm just going to hire a home inspector for the next one. So I'm not the one doing it. We're excited about it. It was a good price. We bought it. Same thing with a franchise or any business you're getting into. It's like, it's exciting. You're making a change or a big life decision. You got to be calm, take a step back and look at like the real numbers. What do you need minimum to make your ends meet? And then is that realistic? And you're willing to put that time in or that cash flow in to do it?
So the last house I bought, I hired a home inspector for it, right? And on one hand, I'm like, I know as much as the home inspector does. So like maybe I should meet him there. We can go over and put our heads together. But then I was like, well, I'm paying him to do it and blah, blah, blah. So I'll argue both sides of the spectrum, because I've had home inspectors where I'm like, bro, how did you miss all of this stuff? Like it was the wrong breakers. It was the wrong wire going into the breaker. It was the wrong size. It was the wrong outlets, a whole number of things. I'm like, I would have caught this if I was the home inspector. And then there's like the other side of that where you check your 3 windows. I've been in that situation. Like, let me check these 3 windows, and these are the only 3 that work. And I kick myself like I should have hired a damn contractor or a home inspector to come and take a look at this with me. So like, it's one of those things that catch-22. Like you're gonna bang yourself and kick yourself in the ass, or you like catch yourself in the back. You're like, yeah, I can do this. I'm just as good as he is at doing this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So moving forward, like, are you looking for more projects?
Yeah, I'm always looking for something else to do. I definitely want to get more rental properties. Like I'm kind of looking at, as long as I'm in the fire service, which I'm not sure if I'm going to go the distance or not in it. I'm kind of just always reevaluating it. I didn't realize like the requirement of not being home. Like we have a 4, 3, 1, and a baby on the way right now. So like we got a lot of kids going on. Like I want to be there, and you get 24 hours you're gone. Like, yeah, it's a lot of days off, but it's still like a third of your life you're not at home. And my wife and I are kind of going over like, are we okay with that? Does that fit in well with her and with me and what we want and our goals for our family and stuff like that? So I'm kind of creating opportunities where I wouldn't necessarily need to stay on this job if it doesn't work out for us. But you can always hire people to work the business. And if I do want to stay in it, I can. If I'm trying to create opportunity, I can leave if I want to, basically. So
that seems to be like the running trend, the running conversation we've had for almost everybody we've had on the podcast. Is like your priorities change and shift as you get older and as the department changes. So like you're earlier talking about like the COLAs, like you guys didn't get COLAs. So anybody who doesn't know, a COLA for us is a cost of living allowance. So when you retire, your retirement increases with the demand and with the inflation. So some places like Ben was just talking about, they don't get COLAs, or the COLAs are capped at a certain percent. For us. So in where I'm at in DC is, ours is capped at, I think it's 3% or 2.5%. I think it's 3%. So every year, the maximum growth we can get is 3%, and it has to be negotiated. So if there's a 10% increase in inflation like it was this year, then we just lost 7% of our purchase power. And those are things that a lot of guys don't take into account, is when you get in the fire department, it's like, well, I don't have a family when I started. Michael said this before, is like, I'm 21 years old. I want to kick indoors and save babies. Like, rah, like that's what I want to do. And like it changes, like it's like, and I love my job. Like I love being a firefighter. It's year 23 for me. 18 with DC, and it's like you said the highs and the lows, but like you got to realize like as you get older, like this is not the same game as it was when you're 21, 22, 25, even 30 years old. Like your body changes, your priorities change, and it seems like that's a running conversation we've had across the board for almost everybody we interviewed and talked to on this thing. If you were to leave, could you lean on your franchise and your rental incomes to replace what you have now?
Yeah, I think if I had to, I could leave right now and we'd figure it out. Some ways it would help me because of those extra days that I'm not. See, like last year, every day it rained, I was out trying to do Roof Maxx jobs, and we can't because it's got to be dry when it goes on. Every day it's nice out. I'm sitting at the station on the bumper, no calls, and stuck for 24 hours. I'm like, this is killing me. I check the radar, and it's like literally every other day it's raining, and it's the days that I'm not on duty, but it just is.
That's like
just roll the
build I'm looking at doing down in Virginia. Like I'm like, please let this be a dry year, because if it's a dry year, I can get this thing knocked out in under 6 months, and we can have 14 units built in like by summertime's end, and we'll still be in the running for low enough rates to where it'll sell for what we need to sell it for if it works out. But like it seems like same thing. Like the nicest days as possible is like when you're sitting at the firehouse. Like it's like today, right now, it's like 60, 65 degrees here in Maryland where I am. And I'm like, man, like this is great. Now I can go out and play. But I'm like, now I'm stuck in a conference call with you knuckleheads, and I'm like, hey, be outside fighting my dogs. But like normally you're at the firehouse, and then like when you come home and you get off shift, it's like now it's raining or snowing. It's like, son of a bitch, like where'd my 65 degree, 70 degree day go?
Yep, that's a common theme. It seems like.
So how many roofs? Like how busy are you with the franchise? So like you work 24 on, 24 off, 24 on, 24 off. So you have a schedule where you're always coming and going, right? Mine's a little bit easier because mine's 1 day on, 3 days off. So how are you, when you get off the shift in the morning, are you like, all right, let me go pick up my truck and my gear, kiss the wife and the baby, say hi, and then back out on the road? Like, is that your schedule now?
It depends on the day. Yeah. So like last year I went all in on the advertising, basically like bet my salary at the fire department on advertising and thought we'll figure it out. And it was some calculated risk, but it felt like I knew that I could always back off of it, and I had some outs I could take if I needed to. But so I started just doing all sales calls from phone, measure off of Google Earth, give them quotes that way. And I did estimates till maybe like end of May, and I was just so swamped with leads that I just did all over the phone. My sales percentage went way down, but I was able to do it. Like one day I sold $50,000 worth of work from the kitchen table at the fire department. Like it was. I'm like, holy cow. It was a Saturday. We didn't have any trainings or anything going on. It was just kind of like run your calls and do your chores and, shaft of the spear type of thing I always joke with, because we're at a slow station. So we're never the tip of the spear. So I always call us the shaft of the spear because we're the second out if everybody else is out. But, we just kind of hung ready to go. And so, that was pretty cool to kind of just figure out creative ways of selling. So it's like, yeah, I can sell less, but I can call 40, 50 people in a day. Half of them don't answer and you got to keep calling. But if I can sell it from the table, is it worth driving out to catch an extra 20% of jobs? I don't know. Right? From a time perspective, I just don't have the time. So,
yeah, the whole Google Earth thing, that's interesting. I never would have thought of that, but I had two different contractors. One did a couple driveways for some flips we were doing, and the other one did, I think, it might have been like a aeration project. I forget what it was. It was for a yard, but that's all they did. They went on Google Earth and dropped pins, and they were able to give me a pretty accurate price. They're like, hey, it's going to be $700 or whatever. And they never had to leave. To me, that's like, man, that's one of those ways I never would have thought of that. But now I'm like, man, that's a great way to leverage versus, hey, you drive 30 minutes across town, sit in traffic, go do this to go price a job that you may or may not get. And there's so many other ways that you can kind of get like that FaceTime with somebody, like I know Tyler, a lot of people were sending these bomb videos, which basically is just a personalized video to your email. Like, hey, this is Ben from Roof Maxx. I'm just thanks for spending a couple moments with me. I worked up your price. It's attached to this email. Look forward to talking. Like there's a lot of ways you can kind of maybe not close as many sales as you would have if you were sitting across the kitchen table, so to speak. At their house, but you just called 50 people instead of having to spend 3 days that you were off hoping to land a couple of those jobs. So that, to me, that's like one of those cool things. Like, how do I make time? Like you said earlier that you use a 24-hour calendar. There's just not enough time. It's like, well, how do I make time? like
Yeah.
how do I do
Right.
it? And that things like that are the ways you do it. You look at things from a different lens, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, I can do that. So I just thought that was
Yeah, it's
an
one thing
interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much technology out there, and that's one thing as I get older, I'm kind of realizing is like figure out what you want to do and like what your goals are for your family or your friends or your retirement, and then build your life around that. Like we kind of all got taught, from my opinion, to get up, be a good worker, punch your clock and go home, and then just figure out, hopefully it's enough money or it's not. But it's like, no, figure out what you want and then build your life around that. If you want time off, then find a way to have time off. If you want to work 20 hours a week like I used to, or 20 hours a day, then do it. If that's what's fun for you. I don't recommend it because it wears you out pretty fast. But yeah, I mean, there's so many ways you can leverage time and technology and
Well, and the seasons of your life change. Like you said, you have a softball team worth of kids there, right? And
Yeah.
like when you first get on the job, like Aaron said, I was just, hey, I'm just happy to go to the firehouse. Let's run some calls. Like this is all I've wanted to do. And then you get real world responsibilities. You have to worry about insurance and kids. And hey, you were in the housing business with the crash. I got hired not long after it. So there was a lot of financial uncertainty. So you start dealing with some of those things like the kids, the financial uncertainty in the world. And obviously you're never going to completely mitigate those types of things, but you can now have some contingency plans. Whereas before you never even think about that. So your goal now might be slightly different than it is in 3 years or 1 year or 5 years. So, when you first got started, like you said, you were just trying to get hired anywhere you could. And now it's like, man, how do I sell roofs and not be sitting here waiting for a call? It's funny how things change, and I guess it's inevitable, right? But it's just funny how outlooks change, and things that you used to put on a pedestal, maybe not as much anymore. And like Aaron said, I still love going to work. Like I love my job. Just got off work this morning. Like I love it. Right. But I also am planning so that if I had to leave or if something happened, I wouldn't be like scratching my head. How am I going to start? How am I going to pay the bills? And God willing, I make it the next 5.5 years or whatever it is, and I can retire or am eligible to retire, I should say. Like, I want to have that option. Like, if I don't want to keep going, cool, I'm done. This was a good chapter in my book. I'm moving on to the next one, right? I think a lot of guys kind of wait for that preparation phase until it's like too late. And then it's like, what am I going to do? I'm going to go drive a dump truck. And hey, man, more power to you. If that's what you want to do, like, that's awesome. I'm not diminishing the importance of that work. I'm just saying, like, when I retire, my goal is not to go somewhere and be told when I'm going to be there, how long I'm going to be there, wait for the phone call to tell me to come back, all that stuff. Like, no. So,
I think one thing that, or go ahead. I was say one thing that I kind of looked at with the fire thing is, like I said, if your seasons change was, what is the pension? What does it mean? And I kind of dug in a little bit, like really rough numbers. Like I'm not a detail like oriented guy. Like I'm like big picture, plan 5 years ahead. Like I have a hard time being right here, right now. It's just kind of wired. But I looked at like our pension and backed off the inflation of like, okay, what does that mean in today's dollars? Because like, you see a number, it's like, oh, my pension is going to be 50 grand a year, 70 grand a year, 100,000 a year, whatever it is. Well, what does that mean in 20 years or in 15 years or in 5.5 years? What does that mean buying power wise? So like I did some rough calculations on the numbers and then backed out the average inflation over the last 30-year type of deal. I found like our pension in today's dollars is going to be like 48,000 ish, 45 to 50. And then, okay, what's healthcare costs? So my kids I'm 34, so my kids are going to be on my healthcare most likely still. And what we know today, if there's social medicine or whatever, then everything changes, reevaluate, but, looked at like private, if you don't have a group to be a part of, it's going to be like 25, 30 grand probably for a family, decent healthcare. Well, that's half of my pension check or more to pay for health insurance. I'm like, man, how are we going to be able to live on 20 grand a year? I don't think so. Maybe, I don't know, but kind of just figure all those numbers out and look at what's realistic and then look at that number and fast forward. Well, if you're retiring in your 50s and you don't have COLA that's a locked in number. So I forget the math on it, but it's like every 15 years your buying power gets cut in half or by a quarter or whatever. But you go to 70, 80 years old and your buying power is equal in today's dollars to like 15,000. Well, can you make that work or not?
So one thing, I was
having a good understanding.
I was talking to somebody else earlier about this, and it's like this person has lived in this house for 45 years, and the house isn't paid off yet. So like that to me is the time and money management thing. Like, so people have the option like, oh, I've got a lot of equity. Let me go ahead and refinance, pull a lot of money out. And that property never gets paid off or gets like towards your end of your career. They never calculate it out. Like if I can't work after I'm 60 years old or 70 years old or 80 years old, like, can I afford to live in my house and pay my mortgage? Like, these are things that people really need to think about, especially with the baby boomer generation getting older now. Like if they owe $200,000-$300,000 in their house and their mortgage payment is $1,500 to $2,500, like, do they have that coming with pension? And once they have that number in mind, like, well, can I afford food and healthcare and the rising costs of everything else going on? Like, those are real legitimate questions that people need to think about when they start getting older. But as like, just like when we were saying earlier, when you're 21 years old, you don't think about that. You're like, I got a new truck, I got a lift, I got a motorcycle, I got a sweet crash pad. So these are all things that change and evolve. And like, that's one of the things, like, you don't know what you don't know, and you're too dumb to ask the questions, or don't know what questions to ask the older generation, or the older generation, they don't know what we know, blah, blah, blah. But they do, like, they have more insight. You just got to find somebody who's wise enough to kind of teach you this, and you got to be wise enough to listen to it. So for time management, like Tyler and Mike both do a lot of VA stuff. So have you ever thought about getting a VA? And like Tyler can tell you, like, he's got different VAs for different aspects of his investing career. Like, Tyler, how did you pick each person for your specific notch or niche in what you do?
So for texting, I went with a company that was established and already kind of had it in with the texting company that I was used, and they trained specifically for texting. And then for my admin assistant, same thing. I researched and found a company that specializes in VAs as admins for real estate investors. And then the third one, I kind of put like a traditional job posting out and let the person know what I was looking for, the hours, things like that. And then I held a couple of interviews and then settled on him. But that's what I was thinking when Ben was talking. I was like, man, there's a lot of things that a VA could do. I mean, if nothing else, appointment setting, quoting, there's so many things that they can fill the gaps, especially when you're at the firehouse. And if you are running calls, they can be doing stuff while you're there. Nothing's better for me than when like I get off shift and then like I've slept whatever, I wake up and there's things that were already done that I needed for that day. Takes a big chunk because, especially if you have a rough night, you have a fire or something at night, you get off in the morning, you're riding that high until you get home. And then it's like the woo until you crash. Yeah. It's like the last thing you want to be doing is admin stuff right then.
Right.
So, yeah, that's funny Aaron brought that up because that's what I was thinking. I think, as far as time management goes, I don't know if you have looked into it, but there's so many VAs that are willing to do it. And on the side note, I tried to hire people locally, but it was just the most horrific process. And I was like, I'm trying to hire somebody in my community. I had interviews. I had all these phone appointments. And I'm like, this is a nightmare. Everybody was, I guess, entitled, for lack of a better word. And I'm like, I can't do this. And the VAs I have are so grateful. They work hard, and it's a huge blessing. So I would look into it. Mike has somebody different, and I'll let him touch on that too, or a different company. But I would say Upwork, Fiverr. What's the other one, Aaron? The Online Jobs PH that we were talking about. There's a bunch of different services, and it's for those of us who are doers and you're so involved in the day to day. And like my mentality was, well, I can do this better than anybody else. Once we get away from that mindset and realize, even if we think that's true and they can do it 95%, is there 95% without me doing anything better for me and my family? And absolutely, because I don't have to do a lot of the things I used to do anymore. And that gives, like, to your point, more time with the family. So go ahead, Mike, if you want to talk to him about your VA experience too.
I would just say that my initial experience with VAs was not that great. And looking back, a lot of it was because of me. I wasn't clear on like what I wanted them to do and subsequent training to do it. This go around, been a lot more successful with it. And I think it goes back to like, okay, if you're going to hire a VA, for instance, Roof Maxx, maybe you want to hire somebody that does nothing. Maybe you want to be the face of the company and you want to talk to all the customers, but everything else, the Google Maps, the measuring, the quote preparation, they do all the back end stuff and then prepare it for you. So it's like, hey, I'll get back to you tomorrow with a quote, blah, blah, blah. You train this person. They literally do all of that not forward facing activity. And then Ben, when he gets off at the firehouse, has 6 quotes prepared that go out to Sally or whoever, or the VA actually has a, quotes at roofmax.com email address, sends it to you, you get CC'd, and they basically take care of all of that stuff. And then the ball's in the customer's court, say, hey, I'll follow up with you in a day or something. So really all you're doing at that point is on the phone, and you can do that at the firehouse, at your house or wherever, and you start to buy that time back. Maybe you pay $1,500 or $2,000, but if you're able to crank out the same amount of quotes or maybe even a little more without all the little minutia, right? You just said you sold $50,000 worth of phone or sales. Like, cool. Like, you just bought hours worth of time and you might actually sell more jobs and God forbid have a better quality of life while you do it. So there's so many possibilities with that. But yeah.
And real quick to touch on that, since you have a franchise, this is what I've done with my VAs, and it sounds like you could probably do the same with Roof Maxx. I'm sure they have a ton of educational videos. They have all of your materials that they've given you. While it's not the same thing, any service that I have, like I use Launch Control for texting, for example. That's the product that I use for texting. They have all these videos to train me. So now all I do is I tell my VA, hey, I want you to log on to Launch Control and watch all these videos. If you have like a website for Roof Maxx, hey, I want you to watch all of these videos. Here's all the material. They will go into that and they'll learn it super quickly. They're very interested in doing so. And it takes so much time off of your hands as opposed to you having to create a whole training program. It's most likely, I'm assuming, it's already there.
Yeah. Roof Maxx Corporate's got a ton of that stuff. So you can put them through the Roof Maxx University and it teaches them, the foundation for all their products and the tech stack that we use and stuff like that, how to use it. And so, it'd be pretty easy to fold that in. I think it's a great idea.
That the fact that they already have the framework built is a huge bonus. Cause like whenever we started, like I didn't have a system. Like I had nothing to teach you because it was all up here. Nothing was written down. Right. But the fact that the dealership or franchise already has something, like my VA is $1,275 a month. And I think a lot of people immediately are like, whoa, I can't afford that. That's way too much. That's 40 hours a week. So it's like just under $8 an hour. And they do anything I need. Put this on my Google Calendar. Hey, do this, contact that person. Like I have them deal with utility companies all the time because you want to go crazy quick, try and deal with getting the water turned on here, the electric transferred there, all that stuff. I hate it, but once you train them, you just bought back how many hours for less than $1,300 a month. And if you sell one extra job, I don't know what your margin is, but you said the average roof is $2,000. I don't know. Say you would have to sell 3 roofs to break even. I don't know. Anything over that is just gravy. So that's just, I don't know. It's just one of those mindset shifts where I think, and we talked about this with Allie, you talk to guys in the firehouse or your partner or whatever the case is, like the concept of having somebody able to do things like that are outsourceable, like is kind of a foreign concept in the fire service. Not entirely, but I think we're just used to like, hey, we do it ourselves. We fix the rig. We do this, we do that. And then it's like, we kind of just get that tunnel vision where it's like, hey, my VA is in a different time zone. So like Tyler said, when he wakes up, stuff that he needed to do is ready to go. Same thing. Like this podcast, for instance, like we give it to a guy who's in a different time zone. He polishes it up, boom, sends it back, ready to go. So it's like, and you're like bending time at that point, like, cause you're using different time zones to your benefit. So it's kind of cool, but anything that's recordable is trainable. So, just elevate and delegate on some of that stuff. So Ben, we're coming up on an hour. Is there anything you want to touch on? Things that we haven't, obviously we could talk about this kind of stuff for hours, but what is it? If there's anything we haven't hit on, we could help you with, the listeners could help you with, or you want to mention that we haven't got to?
So one thing I want to throw out there, I think Roof Maxx is a great fit for the fire service, depending on what your goals are. So if anybody's interested, I don't know if you guys can put my contact information right out. Feel free to give me an email, call, text, or whatever. And I'd love to just give you a really, honest explanation of what it is and what it entails and if it'd be a good fit or not. Because I know a lot of guys do have second jobs, and I think it's a good way to generate cash flow. And you can do quite a few jobs in a day. It takes about 2 hours per treatment. So it's not hard to do 3 or 4 in a day. It's pretty easy to do. So,
So would you recommend, could you pair that up with like power washing or aeration or something else? Or is it strictly like the equipment I have is the equipment that fits here and this is how it's run?
Yeah, I'd be careful getting spread too thin. Most guys will do like soft washing, like roof washing and stuff like that, or like power washing, and then Roof Maxx. If you're doing like decks and Roof Maxx, it's gonna be hard to do that. Or if you're trying to run too many things that are labor intensive, unless you can delegate out and you've got crews, you can, so you're just managing. But that was the other thing I was going to touch on too. I'm thinking of that is I was scared to death of letting other people in to do things. And you have to just get over that fear. Like you said, like hiring a VA is a great idea. I got to look into that. But just like letting things go, or like, in your rentals, like hire a plumber. Yeah, it's $800 or $1,200 to put a water heater in, but you didn't have to go do it at 10 o'clock at night. And if there's something wrong, you call them and say, hey, it's not working. Go fix it because it's under warranty. I used to do everything and just spread way too thin. So delegating and doing what you're best at. Like I think it was like bigger pockets. Like what's your $10,000 an hour task? Like what can only you do? And if it doesn't fit in that box, find somebody else to do it, and I think there's a lot of value to that.
So I think every company has like a add-on value stuff. So here's the reason I ask is because like if they don't meet the specifications that you think they need to have you come out there and regranulate the roof, and you're like, hey, you guys can probably just get away with a soft wash. Could you offer that as a separate option as you're trying to upsell them for more product?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do roof washing, roof repair, and then Roof Maxx. So like I've gone to roof, we last year, right at the end of the season, we had a windstorm came through and we sold, I don't know, half a dozen jobs because of 3 or 4 blown off shingles per house. So we went out, did the shingles for them. I said, hey, it's, $395 for us to come out and do it, or we can just take that out of the Roof Maxx thing. Pitched them Roof Maxx, most of them went with Roof Maxx. And we just hit it while we're there. So
do they work with insurance companies too, or do you guys?
We can, it depends on the situation. So I usually just give them bills. If they need help, then I'll try to submit things like that. But every dealership's going to be different on what they do and don't do. But we've had some reversals where like you get a letter saying you got to get your roof replaced. We're going to drop your homeowners. We've had success reversing those letters by doing a treatment. The warranty kind of helps with that. But that's all case by case. So if anybody's interested in it, definitely reach out. I'd be happy to talk more.
A lot of people don't realize that they have like if there's a hail damage or wind damage or a tornado comes through and the roof's tore up, like some people's insurance will cover the cost of repair or replace. So that's a good thing to keep in mind when you're pitching a sale to people and when you have a property. So Ben, I'm going to ask you, my last question to you is going to be real simple. If you could go back and tell your younger self something or give yourself advice years ago, what would that, what kind of advice would that be?
Probably be to put more money away when I was younger. People told me, but I didn't listen. Find the guys that are older than you, that are where you want to be, and listen to them. Like I didn't really know what I had or didn't have, and just should have paid more attention to the old timers. So I'm not playing the catch up. But
that sounds like sage advice from an old timer. Yeah. All right, guys. Yeah. This is episode 6 with Ben Liebenow and Roof Maxx and the fire department and a father and a little bit of everything, a builder. Thank you for being on here. Do you want to leave your contact information before we roll out?
Yeah. Well, if you want to just give me a call, my number is 989-859-6751. You can call or text. And then our B Liebenow, that's BLIEBNOW @roofmax.com. That's 2 X's on Roof Maxx.
Awesome. Ben, thanks for coming on and spending an hour with us, buddy. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Ben.
All right, guys. End of number 3, First Responder Financial Freedom. Thank you. And we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks again for spending some time with us today. If you found value in anything you heard, please share with someone who may benefit. We look forward to connecting between shows in our Facebook group, First Responder Financial Freedom. Till next time.